What is going on, everyone? We are here for week 10 of the Fanatec GT3 Fixed Challenge Track Guide Series. This week we are at LeMan, which I'm super excited for. It's probably one of my favourite tracks on the service. Had a lot of success here in the past, so pretty excited to bring you guys this guide. Still in the BMW for week 2 of the guide, so it will be quite interesting to see how the BMW hands around here. I've done a lot of laps in the Merc around here over the past few seasons. So looking forward to bringing you that one. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So we'll get into this pretty early because this is going to be a long guide. There'll be lots of little pointers along the way. So looking forward to this one. So let's go. Week 10, LeMan, BMW GT3. Alright guys, so now we're going to break down the lap. So as you're coming down into turn 1, obviously, it's quite a high speed entrance here, so try and set myself up as far to the left hand side as possible, right? And I actually run 2 tyres about halfway over, and I sort of put myself as a driver perspective in the middle of the white line. That's just where I feel comfortable. Now, once I get to this white line across the track, right? It's sort of the white line across the track with the Dunlop chicane grandstand sort of being close to there. That's where I start to turn the car at the corner. Now, I turn very early because I'm actually using all the entry curb here, right? So I put 2 tyres on this as I come around the corner. Now, as I come off the corner, you'll see this white line just here. This is my brake marker into the turn. It's turn 2 officially. This is where I start to brake the car at turn 2. So 5th gear, back to 2nd gear, right? Stay as close to the white line as possible, or as close to the curb, whichever way you look at it. Back to 2nd gear as you're coming into the corner. Now, your turning point is very unique in the way that there's not actually anything really to signify it. I mean, you could be real technical and count the squares, or you could look at the your walls here to work out how many total oil banners, I guess you could say, on the tyre wall it is from the end. But I sort of gauge it more on a feel thing. So I like to obviously put myself in a position where the blue tyre wall's in front of me. I'm sort of in line with the Audi logo at the initial start of the Audi Sport logo, and I sort of look at that point there, right? And then as a perspective, I wait until that apex, or the I call it an apex, but it's the first part of the corner is right near the middle of my screen towards the left. So just before I turn in, the apex should be like right at the bezel of my screen in the middle, and then from there I start to turn the car in. So right at this point here, I turn the car in, and then I get myself to this point here. So I'm sort of in line with the grandstand in the middle of the seating sort of area. But what I want to do is sacrifice a little bit of mid-corner here. So I want to make sure that as I come through, I'm sort of at this point. So I'm not so much sacrificing the in-between. I'm sacrificing actually on the apex. So then I can drive from this point here straight diagonally to the next part of the apex. So I come straight across the track, get nice and close here. Still in 2nd gear, and then once I get to this point here, I really start to pick the throttle up. The car does tend to get a little bit light in the rear here, and it's not just this car with this setup. The car in general around here just tends to want to light the rear tyres up coming out of that corner because of the way it's cambered up the hill, and it pushes away from the apex slightly and then sort of levels out. It's just enough to really sort of put a little bit of pressure on the rear of the car. So from this point here, obviously I've just clipped that 2nd apex. Now I'm trying to carry as much speed and momentum as possible. Now, as long as you do not hit or cross these 2 markers, you can use all this track on the exit. So that's where you want to sort of situate yourself. So as you come off the apex, you want to sort of make sure you can position yourself at this point here when you're fully leaning on the car. Then from that point, you come back on the track as soon as possible, up to 3rd gear, up to 4th gear as you're coming down the hill. I rotate the car in, so I diagonal across the track, right, and I stay to the right hand side here. Now, once I get to this last red bollard, and I've got the car straight, it's a big brake pressure, down 1 gear to 3rd gear. I turn in at this little escape road thing here. So right at this point here, I start to turn the car in at the corner. You want to get the car in at the corner early here because you can see the camber of the road, how it sort of comes into the curb at the apex. So this is where you want to get the car to. Once you get there, pick the throttle up to 4th, carry the speed on the exit. Let the car track right out to the back of the curb, and then start to run down. Now, this one is very high speed. Stay in 4th gear. I don't lift to 5th. I don't shift to 5th. And when I come into the corner, it's a lift and a tap of the brake just to get the nose to bite, and then I'm on the throttle again. So, and I'm doing this just as we get to these bollards here. So what I'll do is I'll just roll forward so we're directly in line. Right there. So it's the first one there that you're aiming for. You'll notice that it is quite close to the corner, but we're trying to carry that speed through. So slightly before is fine because you really want to focus on your exit here. So I'd rather you brake 20 meters earlier and then be on the throttle earlier and carry that speed out of this corner and down that long first part of the straight to the first Mulsanne chicane. Otherwise, you're just going to bleed time here. So get the car to rotate in, clip the curb at this point here. Now the car's going to run wide. All right. Now this is a nice little tip for you. You can use all of this here as long as the whole car is back on the track by the end of the blue bit. So if you do carry a lot of speed in here, as long as you get the car back on the circuit by the time the curb ends, you will be fine. If you push it too far, you're going for a black flag penalty, and I think it's about 1.7 here, which actually it hammers you. It's closer to like 2.5, 3, especially with the straight line pace. You know what I mean? And you could hold it till you get down to the first chicane, but you're still going to sacrifice your exit there and then lose a heap of time. So make sure you're back on the track before the end of the blue square. Obviously, run down through the gears. I tend to stay to the left here, wrap the car through this little like kink in the road, and then I track towards the right and I stay in the right hand lane as I'm coming down. More for just comfort of if you're in a multi-class race and there's GTPs and whatever, you're just sort of a little bit more organised way before the corner, just in case somebody comes firing down the inside of you. So, and then I'm braking about 120 meters in this car. So there's just before the 100-meter board, there's an Armco that is sort of like a really different color. You can sort of spot it. So I'll just go back a little bit so you can see it. But you see how the Armco's got like a lot more white down the bottom, it's about 20 meters before. You'll see just sort of in the corner there by my windscreen wiper. That's where I'm sort of braking. So as I come into the corner, 6th gear, back to 3rd gear on entry, right? So down to 3rd. And then I turn in at this little LED light, or the white line, I guess you could say, because that's in line, but I turn in at this point here. So 3rd gear, start to turn the car at the corner. Use a little bit of curb here. Get the car to, it just helps with a little bit of rotation, and obviously you're just shortlining the track a little bit. Now, between coming off this curb and clipping the apex, you want to go from 3rd to 2nd. So I use 2nd gear to help rotate the car. I get 2 tyres up on the curb. Now, you've got to be super careful here because it is quite easy to use too much on the inside and then you will get a black flag as well. So you have to be very sort of spatially aware where you are on this circuit, because there is quite a few places where the black flag will catch you out quite quickly and then you'll just bleed time. So you want to use the curb, but don't use too much of the curb, if that makes sense. And then as the car comes off the curb, it's going to push. Same again here, use a little tiny bit of curb. Get the car back on the track. The car's going to like just automatically start to track towards the right hand side, which is fine. You're using all the circuit and you're pushing, so the car's going to sort of go where it wants to go. As soon as I come off of there, I start to track back towards the left hand side, the right hand side, sorry, as soon as possible. And then as I'm heading down into the next braking zone, this one's a bit of a deeper braking zone. You can brake at the 100-meter board here. Same again, we're going to go 6, back to 3rd gear, and then back to 2nd between the 2 apexes. So very similar driving style, obviously. The chicanes are very similar, they're just opposite sides, if that makes sense. So brake here at the 100, turn in at the cone, so you turn in quite early here. Use the curb, Then once you get to this point here, you sort of, once you're in line with the apex, you come off the first curb and diagonal across, back to second gear, get the car up on the curb to get it to rotate, and then you want to pick the throttle up quite aggressively about this far from the end of the curb. So the car's going to push a little tiny bit, but you should stay within the line. You want to stay as close to this curb as possible. I try not to use the curb here, but because there is a bump on the back of the curb somewhere along the curbing that does just upset the balance of the car a little bit too much, and I'm trying to stop that sort of that movement in the car. So then once you get close to this curb, the car's going to track wide to the right hand side, sort of stay in line with the dotted line as I come around the corner. I follow it, and then I start to track back towards the left. Alright, so now we're setting up for the last sort of corner. So this one, you get very close to just being able to stay in 5th gear, or you can go to 6th gear in the gear shifts. Right, I use the cone here as a reference point to start to set myself up. So I don't do anything here, but that's like, okay, I'm nearly there sort of thing. So then I start to turn the car in at the corner at the end of the next white line after the cone. So at this point right here. Okay, so from this point you can see it's sort of like a nice trajectory into the corner, right? So I start to turn in. I want to try and make sure that I follow that trajectory by getting my right 2 tyres over the last dash in the road at that point there. I'm going to start braking. There's a gap in the Armco right here. So let me just go to this camera view. So you'll see the little gap in the Armco right there. That is where I start to brake the car. Now from this point here, I want to aim for that cone that is on the outside of the circuit down there. Use the diagonal approach to it. So come in at this angle, a little bit of tyre on the curb here, and then diagonal straight down to the thing. Straight down to the cone. I go all the way back to 1st gear here. Now the reason I do that is just to help with pivot of the car on the corner and to make sure I get a really strong punch out of the corner. So once I get to the cone, I'm sort of on the white line. I go slightly past it. I'm actually turning in right at this point here. Now, it probably looks like nothing, to be honest with you, but it's just past the 4th barrier from the 4th bollard from the corner, but it's in line with sort of the start of the fence, start of the billboard. See how I've just moved forward a little bit? So it's when the front of the car is at that billboard, that's where I start to turn the car at the corner. From that point there, rotate the car in, use all the inside of this curb without hitting them bollards. As soon as you hit them bollards, I think it's like a 3.2 second slowdown. So you've got to be within the track limit, but you want to be as close to them things as possible. The car's going to push a little bit here. You want to make sure you use all the track on the exit, up to second pretty early, and then carry the speed down this next straight into Indianapolis and up all the gears. So just run down here. As I'm coming down this part, this bit's, I sort of have a different way to most guys. I clip this curb here, and then I run to the middle of the road, and I sort of stay around the middle of the road. Same again here, nick that curb, and then I start to head back towards the left-hand side of the track, right? So, this one's a challenging one. So you'll see this little bit of grass that's on the track that's a lot closer to the circuit than anything else, right? So I brake just at the end of the grass, so roughly about this point here. 6th gear, back to 5th gear, right? And I say brake, it's not really a brake. It's more like a lift and just a tap of the brake to get a little bit of confidence to turn the car in at the corner, right? So 5th gear, as you approach into Indy. Apologies, guys. You want to get as close to this curb as possible, right? And then you want to make sure that as soon as you come off that curb, you are trying to get that car as straight as soon as possible. Because by the time you get to this little bit of like gravel escape road right here, this is where you need to be braking to go from 5th gear back to 2nd gear. So you can bang down the gears. You turn in at the end of the curb here. So it's quite an early turn in because you want to get into that camber of the road. You can see how much camber there is. So you got to make sure you get right down in there. In second gear, don't get on the curb, but just get nice and close to it. Pick the throttle up once you clip the apex. Run it out over the back of this curb, up to third gear. Right, Anage, one of the hardest corners. Alright, so you'll see the angle that I'm coming in. So I've come off of Indy. I'm on the right-hand side. I go to the left as soon as possible. And you see I'm lining myself up to put my left-hand tyres between the curb and the cone. So what I'm doing by doing this is the only issue I've got with this and not being able to explain it fully to you is the braking for this corner is very much a feel, and there's no markers, there's no reference points. It's very much you've got to work out where you can get to, but sacrifice a little bit here, guys. Don't be in a hurry to dive bomb into the corner because it's not going to help you. You're just going to push wide on the exit. You could end up in the sand, you could end up in the tyres, you could end up turning the car around on the curb. Like, there's a lot of things that can go wrong here. So sacrifice a little bit on your entry to really focus on the exit. So as you come in, bang it back to second gear. As I get to the cone, I start to prepare to turn, and then by the end of the curb, I'm turning. So, because you don't really want to turn over the curb, if that makes sense, but you want to be like, as soon as the curb's end, you turn the car in. So, second gear, turn the car in now. Nick the curb on the inside. You don't have to like jump over it or anything like that. And then from that point there, you'll be able to square the throttle up, pick the throttle up nice and aggressive, and start running it up towards the Porsche curves. So up through the gears you go. I'm holding fifth gear through this section. I don't go to six. I stay close to the left-hand side here. Alright, once I get to the grass bit here, I brake, downshift to fourth, and then I start to carry momentum through the corner. I turn in once I get to the end of the white line here. So in the middle of the road, you'll see the white line's end. That's where I turn the car at the corner. Fourth gear, carry all the speed, use all the curb through here. You want to kind of dance on the throttle a little bit. You don't want to pick the throttle up too early, because if you make it run a little bit wider, you're going to have a lot of problems through this next part of Michelin Porsche curves. So stay in the sort of not in the middle, but you want to be more towards the right slightly, but middle is good because it sort of deters anybody from trying to have a look. Once you get to the end of the grass here on the right hand side, this is where you turn the car back towards the Michelin wall. Use the curb on the inside, shift up to fifth gear, let the car track all the way, get it nice and close to the wall. At the end of the wall, turn back towards the next corner. Still in fifth gear, and then once you come off this curb, you want to diagonal straight across. It's a brake and downshift to fourth. You want to hug this curb the whole way around the corner. So you want to stay nice and tight through here. You're sort of dancing on the brake and the throttle, keeping the balance in the car, getting as close to the edge of the road as possible. Stay the whole way around the edge of the road till you get to this point here. So you'll see it straightens up here. That's when you start to turn the car back the other way. So once you get to that point there, turn the car back the other way. Get the car to track as close to these little yellow like sausage curbs as possible without hitting them. The car's going to run off the curb at this point here, and you're going to use all the circuit. Now, be super careful. It's kind of like Tete Rouge at the start of the lap. You need to make sure that by the end of that yellow box, you are back on the circuit. If you're not, you're going to get a penalty again. I personally find no more than 2 tyres over there, because it's just too hard otherwise, and then I get the tyres back on the track in time. Run it flat through this next section. So your fourth gear up to fifth. Little bit of curb here. Little bit of curb here. run the car to the right-hand side. I see a lot of guys use the pit lane as like extra turning, but what they're doing is they're upsetting the balance of the car when they hit this yellow part of the curb, because it is actually a curb here. So by using that pit lane, you're sort of positioning the car to bottom out here. So I stay as close to the curb on the inside of the track as possible. I brake just before the yellow bit, back to third gear, so fifth back to third. Turn the car in, get as close to them little curbs as possible, and then diagonal it. I sort of aim for that little tractor in the distance, or the cherry picker, whatever you want to refer to it as. Then come off that curb, and then I try and set myself up in line with the second little red bollard. So I'm sort of not as far to the right as possible, and I'm not as far to the left as possible. I'm sort of in that middle place of the track. Then I brake down to second at the start of this curbing on the right-hand side, and then I turn the car in. I use, I would say, a healthy amount of curb here, like probably about this much, so the tyre over the curb, and then I sort of do the same again at the next one as well, but it's less because I don't want to hit that red sausage curb on the inside. Then once I've used all that curb, the car's going to track out, use all the circuit, and there you go, guys. That is your walkthrough lap of LeMan in the GT3 car for this week's Fanatec GT3 Track Guide Challenge. So, hope this has helped you. Good luck for your week of racing, and we'll see you next week for week 11. Thanks, guys.